Very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us today. The show is Diaspora Dispatches, where I get to bring you the latest news from the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Good morning, good evening, depending on you. Are you tuned in today? It's just about a minute past 3 p.m. here in Nairobi, East African time. We'll start our bulletin this afternoon from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where 6 prisoners have died at the Matadi Central Prison in the Western Democratic Republic of Congo due to poor detention conditions. The death toll could increase according to local media sources. The prison's deputy director intimated that 3 of the victims were suffering from tuberculosis. The condition of the prisoners is also reported to have deteriorated because of the insufficient food. And the detainees at the facilities are given just 1 meal a day because of the lack of enough budgetary allocation by the government, according to prison authorities. Apollonia Longo, deputy director of the Matadi prison, said 3 inmates had tuberculosis, which was detected late, and the patients refused the treatment. And then we move over to Burkina Faso. Reports from Burkina Faso say at least 13 security personnel were killed in an ambush by gunmen on Sunday. The attack took place near Taparko, a town frequently targeted by Islamist militants. Early in the day, a bus hit a landmine near the town, killing 2 people. Burkina Faso's military government has said its priority is to tackle a jihadist insurgency. Then we cross over to Algeria, where the President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has banned the export of foodstuffs. The country imports, a state news agency has said. The commodities include sugar, oil, pasta, semolina, and wheat derivatives. A source is quoted by the agency as saying that the president called it economic sabotage to sell commodities that the country does not produce locally. And the president's decision also bans importation of frozen meat products. The agency said President Tebboune made the announcement after listening to a presentation by Trade and Agriculture Minister on the availability for food staples. Local media outlets have warned of increasing food prices. Algeria imports most of its foodstuff. There has been protest in the past over increasing food prices in the country. Algiers did not give any reasons for the ban, but it comes amid fears of a sharp increase in the global prices of such basic foods such as wheat because of the conflict in Ukraine, which is one of the world's biggest exporters. We cross over to Tunisia, and thousands of Tunisian opposition supporters demonstrated on Sunday in the capital against President Kais Saied's power grab at the economic crisis in the North African country. The latest demonstration was called on by Free Destorian Party, which is led by staunchly anti-Islamist lawyer Abir Morsi. She branded Tunisia's current executive as illegitimate and called for legislative elections to be brought forward from the scheduled date of December. Already plunged into economic crisis, Tunisia has in the recent past seen a shortage of staple food as the war in Ukraine threatens to interrupt key supplies to various Arab countries. The authorities have attributed the shortages to panic buying ahead of the holy month of Ramadan, starting this year in April, when Muslims traditionally break a dawn to dusk fast with lavish family meals. Said on Wednesday declared a relentless war on food speculators and profiteers, accusing them of seeking to strike at social peace and security. We go to Chad, and the government and opposition groups had started peace talks on Sunday morning in Doha. However, the talks were suspended after representatives from one of the 44 rebel groups attending left the room. Chad's government and opposition groups had started peace talks on Sunday morning in Doha, and some 44 armed rebel groups were invited at a first step towards ending a rebellion and holding elections in the country, but the talks were suspended after participants from the Front for Change and Concord in Chad left the room. Before that, the AU Commission's head urged both parties to reach an agreement. And then we go to Mozambique, and Cyclone Gombe, which hit Mozambique on Friday, left a trail of destruction in the province of Nampula and Zambezia. According to provincial tool, Cyclone Gombe killed at least 11 people in the northern part of the country and left a trail of destruction in the provinces of Nampula and Zambezia. After it hit Mozambique on Friday, the cyclone left city of Nampula with several streets impassable. However, the damage was even greater for the population villages like Korani, the roads were cut off, the houses destroyed, and agricultural fields or mashambas on which the locals' food depends were rendered useless. And then we go to Gabon, and the president, Gabonese president, gave a new live public appearance on Saturday. 4 years after Ali Bongo Ondimba suffered a stroke, he addressed hundreds of supporters gathered in Libreville to celebrate 54th anniversary of his party. If he has not yet announced his bid for the next presidential elections, he makes no secret of his ambitions and may be the next Gabonese Democratic Party's candidate. Gabonese will vote to elect their president and their lawmaker in 2023. Following his stroke, President Ali Bongo Ondimba spent long months recovering during his first appearance were recorded, and he had to lean on a cane, raising questions on his succession. Then we go to Senegal, and the army in Senegal announced on Sunday night that it had launched an operation against rebels in Casamance, the scene of an old conflict in south of the country. This offensive is launched less than 2 months after the death of 4 Senegalese soldiers and the capture of 7 others by the rebels in the border between area with the Gambia. The 7 soldiers, members of the West African military mission in the Gambia, ECOMIG, have since been released. And then we go to South Sudan, and while global attention is focused on Ukraine, World Food Programme says now in a press release that a hidden hunger emergency is engulfing South Sudan, with about 8.3 million people, including refugees, facing extreme hunger in the coming months. As the 2022 lean season peaks, food becomes scarce and the provisions are depleted, according to the latest findings published in the 2022 Humanitarian Needs Overview. Particularly at risk are tens of thousands of South Sudanese who are already severely hungry following successive continuous shocks and could starve without food assistance. South Sudan forms part of a ring of fire encircling the globe, where climate shocks, conflict, COVID-19 and rising costs are driving millions closer to starvation, said the United Nations Emergency Food Agency. And on the global front, the latest from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, one of Kiev's negotiators has shared an image of the talks between Ukraine and Russia, which have now entered 4th round and are taking place via a video call. Ukrainian official Mikhailo Podolyak says both sides have now laid out their positions earlier. He said the latest talks would focus on establishing a ceasefire, the withdrawal of Russian troops, and security guarantees for Ukraine. And that is the latest from Africa and indeed from across the world. Emmanuel Malwal, nice to see you this afternoon. You are saying they're right. You're saying, I think you're, saying the report by the World Food Programme is right, and you're saying things are really hard in South Sudan. I'm very sad to hear that. Reports like this, when they give out these figures, 8.3 million, these are just not statistics. These are people, and when you start to think about it, how many of these people are and who are facing starvation, and people who have already gone through so much, it makes you stop and wonder, when will it ever end? I do understand even in Kenya here, we do have some parts of this country that perhaps, and the arid and semi-arid areas that don't do very well when it comes to agriculture and land production. And so a lot of communities from this area are pastoralists. And so for that reason, during such a season like we have right now, we see some terrible images coming from, that part of the country. But I think for us, we can do better. For Kenya, there's no excuse why any Kenyan should be languishing in hunger right now, because I think as a country, we are capable and very well to feed our people. So that is something I've always had a problem with when I see, Kenyans coming together, because, during such times, you'll find the Red Cross making a call and asking Kenyans to come and well wishers to support and donate and give food and money and all that to feed. But that is something that I don't like to see. Thank God it's not happening anymore. I'm not saying it's bad to take care of our people. It's absolutely, and Kenyans were good in doing that. But I think there are proper policies that I could put in place, because these are things we know will come. These are areas we know are prone to, such calamities. We know that as a country. So why we take so long to put measures in place to ensure no Kenyan, gets to die of hunger during this period, the dry season? That is something that I've never understood. And of course, President Uhuru Kenyatta understood and saw this as an issue that he needed to address, his government needed to address. So he put under his Big Four agenda, if you watch us, this is something we talk about so much, he put food security as one of the things, one of the legacies he would like to leave, and he'll want to be remembered with after he's gone. President Kenyatta just have a few months, just slightly over 5 months in office. And so he said he wants to tackle the issue of food insecurity in Kenya, because that is something that can be addressed. That is something that we can do as a country. So for South Sudan, I understand, because the dynamics there are different. But still, I do not want to excuse the leadership of that country, that with its continuous way of doing things, it's making things very difficult for the people and the population of South Sudan. If people cannot be assured of their security, they can't go and till the land, which parts of it is very healthy and very high in production, and people could till the land and engage in agriculture and be able to be just a little bit self-sustenance when it comes to food production. I think that is something that is doable. Majority of the of countries in Africa are countries which can take care of themselves if we have good leadership in place and our people are empowered, because a lot of our land is tillable land, majority of the countries in Africa. So it is sad, but as I said, for South Sudan, it's different dynamics, the war, the insecurity, and all that. It's a myriad of factors that makes it difficult. And so now South Sudanese, about 8.3 million of South Sudanese, including the refugees and the people in that country, are facing extreme hunger in the coming months. It's still going on, but if something is not done, that is the number of people, 8.3, think about it, million people. That's a lot of people suffering. That's a lot. That's a lot of people suffering. And so, the World Food Programme is appealing, and those are the findings that were published in the 2022 Humanitarian Needs Overview. And of course, there are factors that, have brought this to be, and that has to be with the climate shocks. We've seen a lot of flooding happening and heavy rains in South Sudan in the recent past. So I guess that also messed up, the yields. And we've seen the conflict, which I think is the key thing. And COVID-19 also has contributed to that. And that, I think, has contributed to a wide world effect over several sectors, including agriculture, and of course the rising cost of driving. The rising cost is driving millions closer to starvation. That is sad. So hopefully the well-wishers and the people who are always standing with the people of South Sudan will come in and mitigate this. The U.S. is just one of the key partners and stakeholders. That's why they talk loudly, because they're the ones who support South Sudan, especially when it comes to food aid and things like that, and medicine. They are the largest supporters of South Sudan among other countries who do their best to try to help. So hopefully they can come in as soon and quick so that we avert this crisis, even as we wait for a lasting solution to happen in South Sudan. And when you think about matters to do with agriculture and food security, well, there's a decree that was made by which president is Algeria's president, Abdelmajid Tebboune, and this is the president that replaced Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Remember the one that was disposed in 2019? Algeria started protesting before Sudanese started protesting against Omar al-Bashir. And then this president had been sick, had suffered a stroke, was not performing optimally his responsibilities as the head of state. He had served the country for 20 years. And even in his disposed condition, he still wanted to go farther and put himself up for another 5 years. And Algerians said, no, enough is enough. We're going to give you a break. You will go and get better, whether you like it or not. We don't want you serving us. So they started protesting. And of course, the protests were rallied around, bad governance, human rights abuses, corruption, food insecurity, and we see this coming up back again. And the president now, Tibon has banned the export of foodstuffs that the country imports. They're saying the foods that we produce in this country, that we are able to produce as Algerians. So what my government now is going to do is ban any food coming, the same food that we're able to produce here. We will not import it. And I think this is something and a conversation we should start having as Africans, because now we are facing a crisis in the continent because there's a war in Ukraine and Russia. This happens to be the world's largest, suppliers of wheat. Well, I know full and well that in Kenya here, there's a section in the country where the climate and the soil and whatever it is good for the production of wheat, but nobody has really, the succeeding governments have really tried to empower the farmers from this area so that we are able to be self-sufficient in terms of food, in terms of even having that wheat. There's a section in this country that plants wheat and does very well. But because of these imports in the country, that really does not work well for the local farmers. Now the local farmers end up giving up. And we've seen that in the milk sector. We've seen that in the maize sector. We've seen that in other areas where if policies were put in place to protect the local farmers, then that is how you realize a country that is food sufficient. You cannot be food sufficient if you can't produce that food for yourself. You cannot be food sufficient if all you do is import. And I know there are countries like that, especially the UAE, the Middle East countries, but they still do level of production of a lot of their foodstuffs. But us here, we keep importing things that that the local farmers, the local population can produce. And so we end up killing, these farmers, end up killing this industry, the agriculture industry, because they end up not making a lot of profit, and they put so much in terms of input in farming, and it's not yielding back any results because somebody is importing things into the country at a way cheaper price that ends up working and not in favor of the local farmers. So I think this is not just, and I support President Tibon on this. A lot of other policies that he does and he's done since he became the president that I don't agree with. But I think on this one, it makes a lot of sense. Why do you want to import meat while you have a high meat production in your country? Like, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to import eggs? Why do you want to import? And you have that, and the people who can produce it in the country. We have to protect ourselves first. I know this sounds like what Donald Trump would say, America first. But sometimes you have to protect your local economy first, because the farming and all that, like Kenya, we are told agriculture is the backbone of our society, which is true. But what are we getting from agriculture? How much is it contributing to a GDP? Because our farmers are not able to maximize on whatever it is, on their efforts, because of the policies that do not favor them, which are in place. So that is something that we have to review and we have to think about as a country and indeed as a continent. So for the first time, I think I agree with President Tibon over this ban. He's banning any food stuff coming in to the country which can be produced and in high numbers in Algeria. So there you go. All right. And which other story here still in North Africa, Tunisia. Well, President Kais Saied, I think, is playing with fire. And I think he's really been pushing the people of Tunisia. And what he will do is he will continue pushing them with this thing that he's doing to the edge. And we know that it is in Tunisia that the 2011 Arab uprising started. You remember when that young man burnt himself and the whole of Middle East was turned into a battleground that saw Libya devastated until today, and other countries are still trying to rebuild after that uprising. Well, apparently, I don't know if President Kais Saied was alive then, because he will be trading very carefully, which he's not. And we've seen him suspend parliament. We've seen him, sack the government, all the ministers. We've seen him taking control over judiciary, and now he's ruling by decree. And this, is sparking a lot of fears. And Tunisians have been breathing the hardness of the government. They've been going out to the street to protest. And so if he's not very careful, it will be the case of his predecessor, Ben Ali. He will have to flee the countries, because Tunisians will have it too, and they will have to have him leave. So right now they have been protesting. Tunisians have been protesting because they're saying the country is experiencing an economic crisis, and of course there has been a shortage of staple foods, and this, of course, a lot of it has to do with Ukraine. And the wheat that comes from Russia and Ukraine, because the Arab countries, apparently they consume a lot of this wheat that makes the spaghetti, that makes whatever else. So I think it's a real crisis over there. But still, I think President Said is playing with fire, and the more he keeps poking that, I think things will get out of hand, and by the time he realizes it, it will be a bit out of hand. Emmanuel, you're saying, Miriam, South Sudan will not achieve food security because we have more political extension officers than agriculture extension officers in the country. I agree with you, and that's what I said. For South Sudan, I understand, because the dynamics and what is happening there is quite different. The country that really baffles me is Kenya, my country. Yeah, I don't understand why we still can't feed a section of our people. I just don't get that. Because we have all the favorable factors in place. We have good weather. We have huge parts of the countries is agriculture favorable. Yeah, and we're able to know and how, it baffles me. I can't find any scientific nothing to explain to you why, I still see images of some Kenyans dying from hunger and needing help. Well, we do have a special programs ministry that should already be putting measures in place and understanding that from January to maybe May, the country will be experiencing dry season, and, some of these counties will be experiencing, famine. And so we need to buy food while people are harvesting and the prices are still low. We need to buy as much as we can. We need to have processed foods that can be stored longer. We need to, add value to some of these foods, part of it processing and all that, so that we keep in store. So when that time comes, so we will have enough food to send to the people in Turkana. We'll have enough food to send people in Pokot. And that's why you're seeing them killing each other. They don't have enough pasture. And then we'll send our military there, because I think our military are very able and can do a good job to sink boreholes so that they stop fighting over water and scarce resources. Like, this is not even rocket science. It is doable. So for Kenya, it baffles me, because there's no excuse for that. But unfortunately, that is the situation. For South Sudan, I totally understand. Because of the dynamics that we have in place, a lot of things must be addressed first before you even start thinking about food security. And that is not to downplay, the magnitude of this problem. 8.3 million people facing starvation, and others are still starving right now as we speak. That is a huge number that should worry us, that should have us all concerned. That should keep the government and the stakeholders in South Sudan awake at night. President Kerry shouldn't be sleeping. Well, 8.3 million of your people are facing starvation. That is something that should be worrying you. And as a government, you should be thinking of ways, which you could make long-term, policies to support agriculture. But how can people practice agriculture when, they're not guaranteed of their security. They're not even staying in their homes. So, the problem in South Sudan is a bit compounded. So one bullet might not be the solution for it, but hopefully a solution will be reached very soon. So that is what we had for you this afternoon. Thank you so much for. No. Before I complete, I've not talked about President Ali Bongo now. I still have another 4 minutes. President Ali Bongo, the Gabonese president who also suffered a stroke a couple of years ago, and he's not been seen in public. Now, he was seen in public for the first time after a very long time. He suffered a stroke and he was in Morocco for a long time, receiving treatment. And then there was that attempted coup that happened. Was it in 2019, if I'm not wrong? And so he had to sort of come back to the country very quickly and all that. So the attempted coup, of course, the coup didn't happen, and the young soldiers that wanted to overthrow his government were shot dead, right? So this is also another example of just what is just wrong with the African leadership. Ali Bongo took over from his father, Omar Bongo, who had served Gabon for 40 years. And Ali Bongo right now, I think, is almost 15 years into his being president in Gabon. He took over his father. His father had served for 40 years. He died. Ali Bongo came to power. And this man has not been well for quite a while now. He can't even walk by himself. He has to be supported. And he's still insisting, even in his terrible condition. And, I wish him a quick recovery, but he suffered a stroke. So that means he's not able to deliver. And that is the same problem Algerians had with the then president, Bouteflika, who had suffered a stroke, could not work, could not take care of his responsibility as the head of state, but still insisted. So now the Gabon people are supposed to be going to the elections next year. And he came out while celebrating the 54th anniversary of his party. And, he said that, dear comrades, let me just read what he said. In 2023 is fast approaching. I will be there with you. What? You're not taking a break? The only outcome will be victory, a clear, indisputable victory in order to complete the work we've... What work? What work that your father did for 40 years, that you feel... You've worked for almost 15 years now. What is it that your family has not done in Gabon that you feel you still need time to accomplish? What is it? And we know that with their leadership in that family, things have not been going on very well with Gabon. So I don't understand. Maybe one day the Gabonese will get tired of it and they would want to bring change. I don't know. But, he has refused to take a break. He has refused to retire. Even despite of his ill health, he is still insisting, and now he's here telling comrades that 2023 is fast approaching and he will be there with them. Doing what, Mr. President? You need a break. You need to go get better. Your father served Gabon for 40 years. You have served Gabon for almost 15 years. It's time for maybe a new change. It's time for you to take a break and get better and let somebody else come who can lead Gabon to its full potential, or at least to the next level, So let's wait and see if at all he will give his name and he will run for the president. Most likely he will. So I want to see how the Gabon people will respond to that. Thank you so much for your time. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Miriam Gotu. Bye-bye for now.